Thank you all for attending this year's Speak Up for Change Assembly. My name is Allie, and I'm one of the members of our Outreach Commission here at SHS, along with Ethan, Paul, Alex, and Kat. I will begin by asking you a series of questions, starting with simple ones and then gradually building upon them. Raise your hand if you're glad it's Friday. Yeah, woo! It's been a really long week, so thank you all for coming out here today. Raise your hand if you're really tired and want to go home. That's a lot of us. Raise your hand if you feel academic pressure from your peers or parents. Now, I want you to close your eyes and raise your hand if the next questions apply to you. I will then ask you to open your eyes, but still keep your hand up. You may close your eyes. Raise your hand if you or someone you know has dealt with harassment or bullying, but were too scared to ask for help. Now keep your hand up, but open your eyes. Now keep your hand up and open your eyes. Look around. Now you may close your eyes again. Raise your hand if you or someone you know dealt with mental health issues but were too scared to ask for help. Open your eyes and look around. You may now close your eyes for the last question. Raise your hand if you or someone you know has dealt with suicidal thoughts, addiction, or other mental illnesses. You may now open your eyes.
For those of you who are new to our campus, Speak Up for Change is an event that Outreach Commission hosts every year to inspire and to foster a sense of connection and community within our campus. At Saratoga, with its rigorous academics and social, peer, and family pressures, all of us face an impossible expectation to be at our 100% all the time. But with this expectation comes a tremendous amount of stress, which is why we believe the theme of stepping forward would be more than relevant within our community. More often than not, discussing mental health can be extremely challenging. So today, we want to emphasize that it's okay to struggle with your mental health, that it's okay to come forward with your experiences, and that it's okay to ask for help from the people closest to you. We want you to know that there are resources on campus to support you, thanks to our amazing team of mental health professionals and therapists in the Wellness Center.
This whole concept of stepping forward seems simple, but by stepping forward, we don't mean to suppress problems and leave them in the past. We want you to step forward with intention and learn and reflect with each experience and grow as a result. We all go through things that seem impossible to get through, but remind yourself to take that first steps forward and ask for help or find any small way you can begin to heal. Throughout this past week, our clubs have been demonstrating what this whole event is about, a way to move forward with intention, whether that be by vocalizing our beliefs, helping others, or sharing our story. There are so many ways we can take that first step, and today we hope you can learn from the experiences of our speakers. Our first speaker will start off our assembly with a strong message about taking control of our experiences by stepping out of a label.
Hi, my name is Ishirla. I like to say that I try to spread positivity, not with Omicron, but with a smile as I greet my friends in the halls, a good morning or afternoon to my teachers as I walk into their classes, and the occasional chuckle when I hear the ASB joke of the day. It's easy to think that these gestures are entirely meaningless, but when someone is stuck at a low point, when they feel cold and alone, that little spark might be the only warmth that they get. So today, I'd like to tell you about such a time in my life when I didn't think things would look up for me. I'd like to tell you a story about my hopelessness and my hope. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the beat of the fan above me as I recounted my first day of second grade. I could still smell the sharp and acrid tang of the hand sanitizer my father had made me lather on before entering the room. Next to me, my mother lay on the bed listening, her half-open eyes slowly shutting and reopening as she fought to stay awake. She wore a beanie to cover a head that had been stripped of its hair by the excruciating rounds of chemotherapy that wrung out every bit of energy she had. Despite the pain, she smiled warmly and nodded as she listened to me talk. Eventually, I saw her eyes close as she drifted into sleep. I got up and kissed her on the cheek. Whispering goodnight, I tiptoed out of the room, being extra careful to close the door gently as I left. This memory is the last one that I have of us together. Shortly after, she was rushed back to the hospital for more treatments, and the next time I saw her would be as she lay peacefully. The stress lines that marred her face faded away inside of a casket at her funeral 2 months later. When I had to go back to school, I could never focus during class because the feelings of guilt that I had for not being with her in her last moments welled up inside of me like a lump in my throat that wouldn't go away. Questions buzzed in my head. Did I not pray hard enough? Was she ever coming back? Why was my mother taken from me? As a naive 9-year-old, I simply could not let her go. Every day after school, I scampered upstairs and threw the door to her room open, hoping that she'd be sitting there, ready to listen to my usual barrage of what-if questions and rants about annoying classmates. Every day, I desperately wanted to see her smile again, so much so that I remember clutching the sheets to the bed where she had once laid and begging her to come back. Every day, I choked out pleas through tears, promising to always do my chores, promising to never fight with my brother, promising to be a better son if she would just come back. But she never did. And so, I gave up hope. Don't think about it, don't think about it, don't think about it became the mantra that I continued to repeat in my head as I prayed that the overwhelming feelings of loneliness and loss that I felt would go away. But everything reminded me of the emotions that I tried so hard to suppress. Seeing my friends playing with their parents, hearing the deafening silence coming from her desolate room, and feeling a pillow damp with tears beneath my cheek, all while knowing that I would never see her again. So it was no surprise then that, much like a red rubber ball pumped with air past its limit, I hit my breaking point. During class one day, I burst out crying, and when my teacher asked me what was wrong, I told her and the rest of my class about what had been eating me up inside for so long. Unfortunately for me, word spread fast around the school. Soon, I became known as that kid with the dead mom, a narrative that was a constant reminder of all of the memories that I had tried so hard to repress. When people met me, they were careful with what they said, as if I was a bomb that could go off at the slightest touch. When I tried to make new friends, I was met with the same 5 words: "I'm sorry for your loss." Drenched in pity, those words reverberated through my head every day as I tried my hardest to move on. But I wasn't alone. My dad worked around the clock to support our family, and he gave me hugs every morning and every night, all while managing to tell me some of the worst dad jokes I've ever heard in my entire life. Outside my elementary school principal, Mr. Chapman, I still remember how, when he heard what happened, he knelt down, looked me in the eye, and said, "Ishir, if there's anything you ever need, I'm here for you." It was such a small gesture, but it meant the world to me, coming from someone whom I deeply admired. So while the pity from my classmates confined my existence into a box, the support I had from the adults became the springboard that I used to launch myself out of the pit that had consumed me for so long. It also helped that around this time, I found one of my closest friends to this day by chance while walking home from school. With his laid-back attitude, funny as hell humor, and genuine kindness, he helped me learn how to open up through others through our long rants about Super Smash Bros. And passionate debates over who our favorite YouTuber was. In 3rd grade, I decided it was about time I added a new chapter to my story. Despite having no idea how to act or sing, I joined our school musical. I poured everything I had into learning lines and mastering dances because I wanted to become notable for accomplishments of my own, and not just because of the trauma of my past. And it worked. People I met for the first time started to say things like, Oh, you were the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland. Oh, I remember you. You were Daddy Warbucks and Annie Jr. As the first impressions people had of me changed, my confidence only continued to grow. After a few years, my dad remarried and I got a new mom. I must say that I'm wholeheartedly convinced no one as sweet and as funny as her has existed throughout human history. She helped me catch up with all the classes in which I had never had the motivation to pay attention. She worked with me through countless problem sets and used her talents as a professor to break down even the hardest of concepts in ways that even my tiny brain could understand. And trust me, guys, I was as dumb as a brick. She also used positive reinforcement to instill into me a mindset that I could do anything. It's because of her that I stepped out of my comfort zone and started helping others and taking on leadership roles wherever I could, creating a new narrative for myself. Now, I'm not here to take up your entire assembly, so I'll just leave you with this. Try your hardest to feel gratitude for every good thing that happens in your life. There's not a second where I'm not grateful for all those who've helped me become the best version of myself that I can be. If you have a friend who supports you, then show them gratitude. Like this. You. Yeah, you. You are a phenomenal, incredible specimen of a human being. You're gonna crush the rest of today. I'm kidding. You don't have to be that aggressive with it, but trust me when I say that your positivity works like a boomerang. To all my peers, if you have parents or relatives living with you whom you love, then hug them, because it'll make you feel better too. You don't know how long you have left on this spinning ball we call Earth with them, so show them that you care. If I have one regret in life, it's that I didn't spend more time with my mother before her death. I would give anything to be able to go back in time and give her a hug or have another conversation with her. Don't end up with the same regrets I have. To the adults listening or half listening, half playing Wordle, understand that you're in a position where you can guide students, not academically, but emotionally as well. Don't be that adult who tells a second grader to just man up and deal with it as if my grieving was somehow womanly and that was somehow a bad thing. Without even realizing, people like Mr. Chapman changed the course of my life by caring enough to talk to me as an equal. Like him, you must leverage the positions of authority you have to help those who look up to you for guidance. And so, Mom, wherever you are, I hope you can see that your son has redefined the narratives that sought to define him. Yeah, I'm a nerd, a swimmer, a dancer, a theater kid, and a leader. But if I'm one thing, then I, Ishirla, am the author of my own story. Thank you.
Seeking help by talking to peers or mental health professionals about your feelings can be very impactful. It can make it possible to ease some of your feelings of loneliness and help you take control of your own life. Up next is a powerful speech about how stepping forward and seeking help gives us an opportunity to be the person we want to be.
Hi, my name is Reya and I'm a senior. I have two little siblings, Ronnie and Christian, who are freshmen. They probably aren't too fond of me mentioning them, but oh well. I have two doggos at home, Cookie and Monster, Mo for short. I also have an African dwarf frog that's been alive since I've been in first grade. That's 11 years, which is absolutely insane because it's only supposed to have a lifespan of 5 years, and now I am convinced that it's immortal. If you've ever done an icebreaker with me, you've probably heard this information. However, something I don't bring up as often is my struggles with mental health. That is, until now. I started struggling with my mental health at age 12, and to this day it's an ongoing battle of mine. Being 12, I had no idea what mental health problems looked like. So my biggest worry when I started to think about I started to think about how I was feeling, my biggest worry wasn't, oh, that's a mental health issue. Instead, it was that I was crazy. I thought everybody else would think I was crazy too, if I told anybody. Ignoring it seemed like the best option for my 12, 13, 14-year-old self. So, if I ignored it, it would just go away, right? But it became clear to me at the start of sophomore year that it was not going away. It was increasingly difficult for me to do anything. Just getting up in the morning and getting ready for school felt like a physically and mentally impossible task. No matter how much sleep I got, I was tired all the time and never had the motivation to get anything done. It was like Falcon Fest all over again, and the 10 pounds of textbooks from all my classes was just sitting on top of me and making it impossible for me to do anything but just lay there. I thought nobody else felt the way I did, and that definitely put a hindrance on my desire to talk to somebody. I couldn't stop myself from thinking about how selfish I was for feeling the way I did, as I was convinced everyone else had it worse than I did. I know I am immensely privileged. I don't have to worry about food, shelter, or if I need to pick up a job to support my family. I go to one of the country's greatest public schools, and I have the opportunity to focus solely on my education. Despite all that, I felt horrible. I felt guilty I had such a great life. I felt upset with myself for feeling this way, and I felt like I wasn't measuring up to my potential. I decided that I hated the way I looked, hated the way I dressed, hated the way I talked to people, hated the daughter I was, hated the sister I was. And then that turned into thinking everybody hated me behind my back. At a certain point, I thought the world would be better off without me in it. Sometime towards the middle of first semester of sophomore year, I decided that I was tired of trying to deal with everything on my own, and I confided in my friends, which helped a lot. I remember being so anxious and just blurting out all my thoughts over Facebook Messenger. They were and are so supportive and kind and validated what I was feeling. It was really relieving to get that support and care, and it made me realize how much talking to other people helps when you're struggling. They helped me get to a place where I felt comfortable enough to go talk to a counselor. It was a major step for me to get help from others, and they kept encouraging me to improve myself. Looking back, it was definitely the right decision. My counselor set me up with a 504 plan, and I ended up dropping a couple classes. They called my parents, and I was set up with a psychiatrist. We eventually decided on trying therapy because medication didn't fit me well, and that was one of the best decisions in my entire life. It was a moment of relief for me because I felt comforted knowing that if I ever needed to talk to somebody, I had a place to go. But I didn't start feeling better just because I went to therapy. It was coupled with putting a little more effort into myself. I was inspired by people around me working to improve themselves, and it made me want to make my self-improvement a priority. I wanted to stop feeling like I wasn't living up to my potential, so I decided to try. Of course, my problems didn't just disappear overnight. It was a frustrating and difficult process, but having my amazing friends, family, and the school supporting me really helped me to get to where I wanted to be. Now, it's a normal amount of annoying to get out of bed and get ready for school in the morning. I don't feel like everything I do is a mistake, and I really do my best to enjoy every day. I remember this one specific day after we started going back to school in person. And although there was nothing specifically special about that day, I enjoyed it a lot. I started to appreciate little moments, like watching a flock of birds fly by or just walking from class to class. I'm still a work in progress, but taking time to recognize when I'm being too hard on myself or having suicidal thoughts making that decision to try to be my own anchor really helped. I'm in a better place now, but that doesn't mean I don't have bad days. If you find yourself feeling upset, sad, or mad for what seems like no reason, then just allow yourself to have a bad day. Eat ice cream, cry under the covers, watching sad romance movies at 2 a.m. Bad days are normal. Every person has them. Checking in with each other and reminding each other of that is so important because it makes it okay to feel upset. If you're struggling, I need you to know that you're not alone, and if you give things time, it will get better. And I know that statement is thrown around a lot. I have heard it more times than I can count. But I can also vouch for it. I don't think time heals people. I just think time gives people the chance to heal themselves. I inevitably wonder what my life would look like if I didn't have these experiences. But I wouldn't change anything because Those experiences made me who I am today, and I'm proud of that person. At the end of the day, the hard stuff happens all around you and to you, but it's how you react to it that matters. Now that you know more about me and my story, I feel like it's only fair that I give a revised and honest introduction of myself. Hi, my name is Reya and I'm a senior. I struggle with my mental health. I have bad days, good days, and days where I want to throw my confusing lang readings out a window. And I'm okay with that. Honestly, this is one of the scariest things I've ever done. Public speaking scares the bejesus out of me, but I'm here making a speech in front of the entire school, stepping forward in hopes to make at least a smidge of a difference when it comes to empowering others to take mental health seriously. Thank you.
Brene Brown once said that many of us are willing to extend a helping hand, but we're very reluctant to reach out when we need it ourselves. It's as if we've divided the world into those who need help and those who offer help. The truth is that we are both. Our next speaker, Allie, will be sharing her experience with us.
Suicide. Selfish, crazy, shameful. A decision made to harm loved ones. Usually met with, nothing can be that deep, and this generation is too soft. Struggling with mental health. Weird, psychotic, something to hide and be ashamed of, especially if someone is medicated or seeking therapy. A sorry excuse for being unable to get yourself out of bed. Opening up about mental illness, oversharing, attention-seeking, resume padding. Semicolon, a noun. A punctuation mark indicating a pause, typically between two main clauses, that is more pronounced than that indicated by a comma. The effortless dot and dash of a black ink pen indicate the decision made by an author to continue a sentence rather than end it. The semicolon is emblematic of people struggling with mental health, choosing to continue their story rather than ending it. Each time I simultaneously hold the Control and colon button on my laptop to compose an effortless semicolon, I feel a sense of pride. The satisfying click of the chunky black cubes is calming, because I can write anything. Although I'm very open about my mental health, I still find it difficult to talk about, and I'm endlessly proud of the speakers who are standing alongside me today. I struggled with depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts alone for most of my life, and it wasn't until 3 years ago that I decided to reach out for help. Most of my blurred days were met with crying spells and the solace of my comforter, lashes of anger that damaged my relationships with my sisters and parents, the overwhelming idea of continuing on and living out the next day, and eventually followed by numbness and dry under eyes. Being so young, I was unaware of mental health education and grappled with questioning whether I was normal or not, something a lot of you may relate to. I found myself obsessed with online quizzes and diagnoses, YouTube videos on people's experiences, and Wikipedia searches of what defines depression. I felt dirtied by this feeling that I couldn't shake and wondered if I was making it up in my head. Because I isolated myself from help, my poor mental health manifested itself as eating disorders, toxic friendships, self-harm, and lack of motivation in school or extracurriculars. There was no definitive breaking point within my journey to reaching out for professional help, but rather an endless conversation or monologue in my head consisting of pros and cons list contemplating reaching out for help. I always knew in my heart this lifestyle wasn't sustainable, but I didn't feel I was deserving of recovery, self-love, or help. Depression had manipulated me into believing I was a bad person, unworthy of being happy. Somewhere along the lines, I realized I owed it to myself to attempt to love this mind and vessel I was born with, despite what my brain was telling me I was: crazy, attention-seeking, abnormal. At 14, I decided to tell my parents, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I had to sit them down and little by little explain what I was struggling with since I was in 3rd grade. I remember the night my mom wrote an email to my doctor explaining the situation, and saying it out loud and having someone respond to it made me feel for once I didn't have to be guilty about anything. I didn't have to be guilty of being dramatic or needy. The process of reaching out was extremely difficult and took me well over a year to get situated with therapy, medication, healthy friendships, and slowly rebuild my relationships with my family. But it was real, and I'm proud of myself. I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety my freshman year of high school. These 2 words, depression and anxiety, something so stigmatized and often met with awkward silences and judgments, actually made me feel incredibly validated. Only then did I fully realize mental illness is something that I possess, and not something that I am. A chronic chemical imbalance isn't who I am. You are not a bad person for having depression or suicidal thoughts. You are not lazy. Depression chemically changes the way your brain functions, making your motivation come and go in sudden waves. None of this is your fault. Depression isn't a punishment for something you did or for someone you are. You are deserving of receiving love and are deserving of the ability to love yourself freely. I didn't find a cure for depression, but rather a blend of good support systems, hobbies to distract myself with, a healthy relationship with myself, and coping mechanisms. On November 4th, 2020, I shared my mental health story outside of my family and close friends for the first time on my Instagram. It was painful. It was painful to type out every word of the 10 slides and relive my trauma, but it felt cathartic and freeing. I finally made peace with my past, although I will never forget it. I wasn't expecting anything from the post except relief, but my inbox was flooded with supportive messages from friends, family, and peers. I felt honored that my classmates and friends trusted me enough to share their own stories with me, and I truly understood how pervasive poor mental health is in our community. Through speaking publicly, I found a passion for discussing mental health, whether it be about suicide prevention, internalized racism, or sexual assault. Speaking at events like this are extremely daunting, but also extremely rewarding. I hope to educate myself more each day, as I'm not a professional and the worst activist is an ignorant activist. One of the most important things I learned and am still understanding is that the only truth that matters is your own. There will always be people that don't believe you because they already made a decision in their head of who you are, and that is not your fault nor something you can change. If you have or are currently struggling with mental illness, I believe you and I love you. If you have been abused, manipulated, taken advantage of, assaulted, it is not your fault and it will never be your fault. You are not making it up. If you were raised to bottle up your emotions, keep your head down, and keep your mouth shut, and only express your feelings through anger because being emotional is a feminine trait, Know that I won't judge you if you cry. Although this isn't an Academy Award speech, I want to recognize a few people who have helped me tremendously throughout my ongoing journey with depression. I am so lucky to have my two older sisters, Lauren and Bella, who just like me had to overcome trauma and mental health struggles, and my parents for believing in me and who dedicate themselves to unlearning the mental health stigma they grew up with. I want to thank Elsa and Anand, who are my only friends at one point in time when I had lost everybody else. Elsa, you are the strongest person I know, my biggest inspiration, and never falls short of reminding me every day that I am not a burden. I also want to appreciate adults in my life who continue to support me every day. Mrs. Cunningham and Mr. Torrance. I will never forget the day Mr. Torrance went to my house amidst the hectic trunk or treat to make sure my sister was okay, and when he called me in the middle of the night to encourage me after I lost a big election. You all are my biggest inspirations. This is an ode to my younger self who didn't believe would make it to 16. I'm so proud of you. You have grown so much in the past 3 years, and I don't ever want you to forget how much I love you. If you too are a survivor of suicide or abuse, or are still alive to hear this today, we did it. And if you too are still struggling with mental illness, we'll be stepping forward together. Thank you so much for listening, and if you ever need a hug or someone to talk to, you can approach me anytime. Thank you.
Sometimes we have to take a step back in order to heal before stepping forward. Our next speaker is someone you will definitely recognize from either cheerfully saying hello to you in the halls or pulling you out of class for excessive tardies. He's a role model to me in leadership and to so many other students on campus. Please welcome Mr. Torrance.
My glasses are going to fog up, so I'm going to take my mask off. If I had $1 every time I heard, man, Saratoga High School looks like a prison. Look at all the gray, all the cinder block. That grass is the last natural grass on our campus. And you can't even walk on it. Wow, I'd be rich if I heard all those comments. To an outsider driving along Harriman Avenue, it may appear a little too dull, too much cinder block, a lack of what I might call sexy. But if you stop to consider a few things, the school comes to life. For example, in the 1962 yearbook that I'm holding in my hand, if you open the inside cover, it shows that those redwood trees over there, their trunk is as thick as your wrist. Those big elm trees right there are 4 feet tall. They're taller than the students. Where you're sitting right here was dirt. Well, okay. Another thing in this, where you're sitting, back there on the planter box there's 2 plaques. One of the plaques was by the class of 1968, which included a Nobel Prize nominee. And can you imagine, first of all, 1968, what the school was like? Girls, you had to wear skirts. There was no badminton team, no tennis team. There was no volleyball team. And the highest grade point you could get was a 4.0. Whoa, cray cray. All right, wrong use, sorry. The Falcon underneath this tarp right here was built in 1984 to honor the 25th anniversary of Saratoga High School. Over the years, various sports teams felt it was a bad mojo if they walked on the Falcon on a game day. Kind of interesting. Over there, if you look at the stairs over there, on top of the stairs, you'll see a little pot of red flowers. At the base of that plot is a plaque for Helen Orb, and it says, 31 years, teacher, mentor, and friend. She started teaching here as a PE teacher, and the school first opened in 1959. And then she went from the PE department over to the journalism department and kind of got our yearbook really going strong. Then she went from the yearbook over to became a guidance counselor, and then went from there over to the district where she started our very first alternative high school, the Mark Twain School. Behind you over here is the Thurman Drama Center, named in honor of a longtime parent volunteer over the years, Kathy Thurman, who spent countless hours supporting students who have decided to step forward and try to act on a stage, including a young Jay Lee, graduate of 2011, who currently holds a regular acting job as Chris Park in NCIS Las Vegas on CBS. The sign behind me, up on the student center, was the idea of a class a few years ago that thought that the school could use somewhat I might call sexy. They wanted a sign in the student center. They wanted the sign outside the student center. And they had enough money for a third sign over there by the cafeteria. As the activities director at the time, I called around and I found a guy that came highly recommended, but he was booked for 6 months. I said, 6 months? What painter's booked for 6 months? So I went around and I looked for other people, couldn't find anybody. And all of a sudden, one day, this guy showed up out in the front parking lot in a beat-up old white van. He says, I'm in the middle of that really long project up in San Francisco, and I needed to take a mental break. Can I come down and do your signs? I said, you bet. So for 3 days, he actually parked his van right here during school while the kids were in class, and he painted these signs. He was done on the third day. And I said, what in the world is this big 6-month-long project up in San Francisco? He said, oh, I'm doing a little thing called the Chase Center. I'm doing all their emblems inside. I said, no way, you're the real deal. He says, yeah, I am. And I said, as he said goodbye, I said, hey, how about putting a little Go Toga up in the Chase Center locker room on the Warriors sign? He didn't say no, he just left. I could go on. There are 22 memorials on this campus. We just posted them on a Facebook page last night. All the way from the Zappelli room in the main office, all the way out to the barbecue pit at the baseball field. 22 memorials with 22 different stories. Many of these stories involve people who've taken a risk in their lives, something new, or they overcame a challenge. For many of us, these challenges impact our mental health. My own mental health was challenged this year with the passing of Mr. Dwyer in December. 22 years ago, I was hired to replace Mr. Dwyer as a geography teacher. He moved on to be an econ teacher. In the last few years, I became an assistant principal, and he started teaching geography again. I was surprised, like many of you, to hear of his passing. It brought back difficult memories of losing my own mother to an unexpected death, my niece who recently died of a fentanyl overdose, and my very close older brother who had died of suicide. My friends told me to take the time off, to take a day off. But I thought I needed to stay busy and I would be fine. Mr. Dwyer had passed away on a Friday, and by Sunday night I had run out of things to do, and I was feeling sad, distraught, and having a tough time. Monday I took a day off. It was the first day I took off in school in several years, including the pandemic, when Mr. Louie and I were often the only ones on campus. It was a big deal for me to take a day off. I thought, oh my goodness, who will check Screener 19 at the library and get those nasty looks like, what are we doing this, Mr. T? Who would stand there at the crosswalk and say, stop and go, and listen to Haley and Kiana laugh about something ridiculous? Who would tell Cooper, Daniel, Joey, and Connor in the hallways, you got to get back to class? Who would do all these super, very important things? And then I got a text from Mr. Louie that said, Matt, you doing okay? I don't remember exactly what I texted back, but I said, no, I'm going to take tomorrow off. So I took the day off. I got away from this place. I was helped, but I wasn't healed. I'm still healing and will for some time, but this healing process started with a pretty big step forward for me. Don't wait for a crisis before you think about stepping forward. Sometimes you need to take a step forward to break the routine. One of Saratoga's high school's own budding rappers, Dr. Shakes. Maybe you've heard of him by the name his mother gave him, Sahil. Talked about stepping forward when he wrote in one of his raps, social media bussin', yay, I see it through my phone. Always trying to hate, trying to throw a little bone. Lots of mental snapback up in my cologne. That's why I be trying to get out of my zone. We got to get out of our zone like Dr. Shake says when it comes to mental health. We're laughing, but I'm serious. Have that conversation with your parent while you're on a hike up Villa Matavo. Step into the wellness center and pour yourself a cup of tea. Email your guidance counselor and hear their advice. They have over 100 students they've talked to every year for many, many years. Don't tell me they haven't heard of something that they haven't heard of anything. They've heard of everything at this point. Another Saratoga High School budding rapper, Rish, and the name his mother gave him was Rishi, addressed this same idea with advice to tune out the noise in media and social pressures when trying to step forward. He wrote in his rap, I will go away, I will be okay. Gotta keep my head up, no time to pray. Only actions are the verbs I use today. Only hear myself, because I don't need to hear the hate. I thought they're supposed to rhyme. Think about these lyrics and the stories that you've heard today from your peers. I challenge you to think of a way to step forward for your mental health. These buildings are going to stay looking like a prison. The walls are going to be gray, and we're not going to change the cinder block. And a matter of fact, that lawn pretty soon is going to be turned to turf. Well, you're going to at least be able to walk on it. It's beautiful. This community, this school is beautiful because of the 22 memorials of meaningful folks that are behind them. It's beautiful because of the living stories of over 1,200 students and 200 staff members. Falcons, let's encourage each other to step forward in our stories and make Saratoga into the school we want it to be. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Derek Sue, and you may recognize my voice from Good Morning Falcons. I want to first thank the Outreach Commission for organizing this event for students to share their voice. And thank you to all the clubs that participated throughout the week by hosting interactive and engaging activities. This year, thank you for reminding us to always express gratitude to our friends and family, and approaching life with a positive mindset amidst our personal battles. All of us can feel hopeless at times, and hugging a classmate can do wonders. Allie, thank you for sharing your story on seeking help and continuing to advocate for mental health awareness. No one should ever call mental health awareness oversharing or attention-seeking. These conversations enrichen our experiences with each other. Reya, thank you for sharing that anxiety can't disappear in a blink of an eye. It takes courage, time, and commitment to truly overcome our personal challenges. Your voice will lend nuance to often stigmatized discussions surrounding mental health. And Mr. Torrance, thank you for appreciating both the physical beauty of our campus and the meaningful, lively stories behind it. As a mentor for myself and many others, You have set a great example of how to realize when we need to take a breather. And thank you for everyone who wore blue today to support our panel speakers. The speakers who shared their stories today exhibited a great amount of bravery. Although asking for help for the first time can be difficult, mental health should never be suppressed by social or academic stress. There's a popular quote I assume many of you have heard before by the esteemed basketball player Troy Bolton. We're all in this together. It's cheesy, but it's true. This entire week of activities should help students realize that they are not alone, and it's okay to talk about mental health. This week of mental health awareness continues at lunch with a variety of activities on campus. Crafting Club will be hosting a finger knitting activity in the Student Center. Girl Up will be hosting an open discussion centered around domestic violence and allyship in the Wellness Center. And, lastly, the Internet of Things will be exploring the intersections of technology and mental health in Mr. Wang's room. I'd also like to remind everyone of the mental health professionals and therapists on campus. Please reach out to Ms. Shova to schedule an appointment. They're super friendly and easy to talk to. The Wellness Center has an open door policy in case anyone needs to talk to an adult or take a break. And as you leave, there will be a resource table in the back with more information. Please stop on by. I hope everyone has learned something this week. If you have taken anything away from this experience, I hope you are reminded that we can all take the first step together, and no one is truly alone. Students and teachers, we appreciate you for taking the time to listen to these wonderful speakers, and I hope you can continue these conversations long after you leave today. Thank you.